Chapter 1 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes Chapter 1 Sun. Xiao Wu was jolted awake from her dream. Tears flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. She had lost count of how many times she had been jolted awake. Her heart was pounding so hard that she couldn't breathe. For a first-tier god, such a situation was impossible. However, she really was sick. It wasn't easy for gods to fall sick, but once they fell sick, they would be in great danger. Tang San had predicted that a calamity would befall the god realm. Then, the god realm's defenses weakened as the god realm expanded. Then, the space-time turbulence struck. The Golden Dragon King revived and launched a sneak attack. In the end, the god realm was swept away by the space-time turbulence. Everything happened in a short period of time. Xiao Wu and Tang San's son, Tang Wulin, had to stay in the Daluo continent because the Golden Dragon King had injected his essence into him before he died. This was to prevent him from absorbing too much immortal spiritual energy and triggering the Golden Dragon King's essence. As the saying goes, mother and child are connected by heart. After the god realm was swept away, Xiao Wu washed her face with tears every day, which eventually led to her becoming seriously ill. Even as a god king, Tang San could only alleviate her illness. He couldn't cure her completely. It was difficult to untie the knot in one's heart. Furthermore, Daluo was still in the space-time turbulence. As a god king, Tang San and the other gods were mobilizing immortal spiritual energy to stabilize the god realm every day to protect Daluo. Therefore, he couldn't stay by Xiao Wu's side all the time. Mother, a soft cry sounded. In the next instant, a figure walked in from outside. Her pinkish blue hair flowed behind her, but her beautiful face was filled with worry. Xiao Wu's heart palpitated a little when she saw her. She opened her arms and hugged her. She kissed her on the cheek and said gently, "Wutong, I'm so glad that you're by my side." Tang Wutong gently stroked her mother's back and said gently, "Mother, you're thinking about brother again, right? He'll be fine. We'll definitely find a way back. But I don't know how long that will take. I'm really worried about him being alone there." Xiao Wu couldn't help but cry again. Lin Lin left us when he was born. He didn't even have a sip of milk from his mother. I'm not a good mother. I've let him down. Tang Wutong hugged her mother tightly. "Mother, don't say that. You didn't want it to be like this. Furthermore, don't you have grandfather and grandmother to take care of the Daluo continent? Little brother will be fine." Xiao Wu's breathing gradually calmed down, and the intense palpitations finally passed. She sighed softly. "I hope everything is fine. I really want to go back as soon as possible and return to his side." Tang Wutong giggled. "Mother, why do I feel like you're becoming more and more biased? You have to love me too." Looking at her daughter's sweet smile, Xiao Wu was finally amused. She scratched her daughter's nose and said, "You're already so old. Yet you're still fighting for attention." Tang Wutong snuggled into her mother's arms. "No matter how old I am, I'm still your daughter. All right, help me comb my hair." Xiao Wu swung her long hair as she got off the bed and sat in front of the dressing table. Tang Wutong stood behind her mother and combed her long hair. "Father is really too much. He doesn't even comb your hair for you." Xiao Wu shook her head. "How can you blame him? He's under the most pressure. I've always known that without Lin Lin by his side, the pain in his heart wouldn't be any less than mine. However, he still has to take care of the safety of the entire god realm. He has to stabilize the god realm so that it won't be damaged by the space-time turbulence. As the god king, he has too many burdens on his shoulders. If it weren't for your father, the god realm would have collapsed long ago. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't even have a chance of finding your little brother. Your father is the one who has it the hardest." Tang Wutong nodded. "That's right. Sometimes, I really hope that father can have some time to rest." Divine Council. A huge ball of light exuded a gentle glow in the center of the hall. 6 people stood in each corner, injecting different types of energy into it. Tang San's expression was solemn as he stood in the center of the inner circle. His hands were emitting a blue and dark red glow respectively. That was the power of his Poseidon god puppet and Azura god puppet. On his left was the evil god Jidong, who was dressed in black and exuded a faint evil aura. On the other side was a woman in a long white dress who exuded a peaceful glow. This peaceful glow gave people a sense of peace and tranquility. It was the good god Blaze. Below the two of them stood a handsome young man with blonde hair and a burly young man who looked simple and honest. The blonde young man was naturally the previous god of emotions, Rong Nyanbing, who had been preparing to leave the god realm to travel the world. The other person was the Herculean god, Zhou Weiqing, who had come from the heavenly jewel world. Back when Tang San and the god of destruction were facing off, it was because of Zhou Weiqing that Tang San was able to turn the tables and regain control of the god realm. In the position opposite Tang San, there was also a tall young man. His eyes were penetrating, as if they could reflect the universe. He was the legend of the Daoluo continent after Tang San, the spirit Ice Daoluo, Huo Yuheo, who had founded the Spirit Pagoda. He had also inherited Rong Nyanbing's god of emotions. After Tang San ascended to the god realm, he was the only one who had become a first-tier god. Of course, he had another identity. This identity was also the reason why Tang San didn't like him very much in the past. As a result, he had suffered a lot back on the Daoluo continent. He was Tang Wutong's husband, Tang San's son-in-law. No father would be in a good mood when their daughter was married off. Tang San was no exception. Among the six of them, Tang San, Ji Dong, and Blaze were god kings. The god of life and the god of destruction had sacrificed themselves to protect the god realm from being destroyed by the space-time turbulence. Rong Nyanbing, Zhou Weiqing, and Huo Yuheo worked together to help Tang San and the others maintain the operation of the Divine Council. The giant ball of light was currently displaying the current situation of the god realm's barrier. If there was a weak spot, they would have to channel the immortal energy of the god realm through the center of the god realm to replenish it. This was to ensure that the space-time turbulence couldn't destroy the god realm. They had already lost count of how many times they had done this. The energy of the god realm was constantly being depleted. If the god of destruction hadn't repented and sacrificed himself with the god of life to compress the god realm would have collapsed long ago. Finally, the light from the center of the god realm gradually dimmed, and it returned to its original state. Only then did the six of them slowly withdraw their divine power. Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 2 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 2 Rong Nyanbing chuckled. What's so hard about it? It's all for the god realm. Sigh. I regret it. If I had run away earlier, I wouldn't have been left behind. Tang San smiled. There's no use complaining. This proves that the god realm needs you. Rong Nyanbing rolled his eyes. Forget it. Anyway, I'm not running away. It's up to you. I'm not as responsible as you are. Do you all want to come over to my place? I'll make something delicious for you all. Even though Rong Nyanbing didn't have a god seat, he was still a first-tier god of the older generation in the godly realm. He had a strong foundation. Even though the culinary god seat belonged to Oscar, the title of the #1 chef in the godly realm would definitely belong to this demonic chef Icefire. I'm not going. It wasn't easy to stabilize. I'm going to accompany Xiaowu. At the mention of Xiaowu, Tang San's eyes dimmed. His wife's poor health had always been the biggest pain in his heart. No matter how strong a person was, there would always be a weak spot in the depths of their heart. How could Tang San not be the same? Rong Nyanbing walked over and patted him on the shoulder. It'll be fine. Everything will be fine. Ji Dong said. Our god realm is still relatively stable at the moment, although it's constantly being depleted. With the seeds left behind by the god of life and the god of destruction, we can still replenish some immortal energy with the core of destruction and creation. There's nothing to worry about for now. Brother Tang, shouldn't we think of a way to get the god realm out of the space-time turbulence? Otherwise, we won't have any chance of returning. Tang San nodded. That's exactly what I wanted to say. Now that the god realm's situation has stabilized, it's time for us to find a way out. According to our understanding of the outside world, the space-time turbulence is a disaster for the entire universe. Now, we have to wait for the right time. For example, when the turbulence approaches a large star, we might be affected by the star's gravitational force. That's why we have to wait for the right time. Ji Dong said. I hope that day comes soon. Blaze glanced at Ji-dong. She understood her husband's feelings the best. After the internal strife in the celestial realm, Ji-dong had always blamed himself. He believed that if he and Blaze had not been in the celestial realm at that time, the god of destruction would not have rebelled because of differences in ideology. If the 5 great divine kings had worked together, they might have been able to stabilize the celestial realm and prevent it from being swept away. Therefore, Ji-dong had been doing his best to protect the celestial realm with Tang San, hoping that the celestial realm could be resolved as soon as possible. All right, everyone go and rest. If they discover anything, the central command of the God realm will alert us. Thank you for your hard work. Walking out of the divine council, he was greeted by the immortal clouds outside. If he didn't know that the divine realm was currently in the midst of space-time turbulence, he probably wouldn't have felt anything different. At the very least, the ordinary gods were still living a peaceful life in the God realm. Looking at the beautiful scenery in front of him, Tang San's expression softened. All this time, his greatest wish had been to be with his family, to be together forever. If everything had been normal, and the God realm had not suffered this calamity, then he would have been able to live happily ever after. His children would surround him, and his wife would be by his side. Now, when he thought back to everything that had happened on the Daoluo continent, he would feel warmth in his heart. He had done everything he could. Not only had he brought his family to the God realm, but he had also brought his companions, the first generation of Shrek's 7 monsters, to the God realm. However, a sudden calamity had separated him from his family. How could he not miss his son in his heart? However, he couldn't show it in front of Xiaowu. He couldn't let Xiaowu see his pain, because she was already in a lot of pain. Light flickered, and space changed. In the next moment, he was back home. All right, Mom, what do you think? My skills aren't any worse than Dad's, right? Tang Wutong said with a sweet smile. When Tang San entered, he saw that his daughter had finished combing his wife's hair. It was still that familiar scorpion braid. Tang San walked behind his daughter and reached out his hand. He silently covered her eyes. Dad, Tang Wutong almost blurted out. Tang San couldn't help but laugh. How do you know it's not Huo Yuheo? Chair, Huo Yuheo isn't that bored. Although Tang Wutong said that, she had already turned around and hugged her father's waist. She buried her head in her father's embrace. Tang San snapped. You're so heartless. You're so outgoing now that you have a husband. Don't you know who dotes on you the most? Tang Wutong giggled. Of course not. I love Dad the most. Tang San was satisfied. That's more like it. If you don't say something nice, I'll go and beat Huo Yuheo up. Xiao Wu couldn't help but turn around and roll her eyes at her husband. How old are you? Why are you still acting like a child? Tang San said. This is called declaring sovereignty. This is my precious daughter. How are you? Are you feeling unwell today? Xiao Wu shook her head and smiled. No, I'm fine. Tang San let go of his daughter and walked forward. He hugged his wife and lowered his head to kiss her forehead. He knew that although his wife said that she was fine, it didn't mean that she wasn't. She was afraid that he would be worried. Ever since she separated from her son, the originally lively and cheerful soft-boned demon rabbit had disappeared. Now, she always had a faint look of worry between her brows. Xiao Wu's illness was a psychological problem. It wasn't something that could be cured by any herb. Psychological problems had to be cured by psychological medicine. Xiao Wu, let me tell you a piece of good news. Tang San smiled. You've contacted our son. Xiao Wu suddenly stood up and stared at Tang San with her beautiful eyes. Tang San's heart ached. Not yet, but the seed that I left behind should have already taken root and sprouted. Our son will be fine on the Daoluo continent. Don't worry, there's no danger at all. The good news that I'm talking about is that the God realm has finally stabilized. We won't have to worry about being destroyed by the space-time turbulence for at least 1,000 years. This way, we can free up our hands and find an opportunity to escape from the space-time turbulence. As long as we escape from the space-time turbulence, we might be able to find a way back based on the location that I left on our son. Although I don't know how long it'll take. Trust me, we'll definitely be able to return. Xiao Wu nodded vigorously. We'll definitely be able to. Tang San hugged her and said, then you have to promise me that you'll get better quickly. We still have to go back and play on the Daoluo continent. We'll bring Wutong and Linlin along. Our family will also travel the universe. When the time comes, I'll resign from my position as the God King and accompany the two of you. Is that all right? Yes, I'll definitely get better. It's just that when can we escape from the space-time turbulence? Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 3 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 3 Yes, the God Realm needed an opportunity. However, even Tang San himself did not expect that this opportunity would come so quickly. Over 100 gods were gathered around the Divine Council center of the God Realm. Tang San sat high up in the main seat. At this moment, whether it was him or the gods below, who were at least level 3 or above, all had excited expressions on their faces. Just a moment ago, not long ago, the center of the God Realm suddenly felt a suction force coming from outside the space-time turbulence. This opportunity came so suddenly that it only lasted for a few seconds from the time it was discovered to the moment it disappeared. However, the instantaneous warning from the center of the God Realm immediately made the gods, who had been waiting since the God Realm stabilized, very excited. Tang San did not hesitate to summon all the gods above a certain level of strength. Ji Dong looked at Tang San somewhat nervously. It can't be just that one time, right? Tang San shook his head. It can't be. The space-time turbulence has its own characteristics. It doesn't change in a straight line. Instead, it will fly in circles. The strength of the suction force was not small, so the center of the God Realm felt it immediately. Then, it's very likely that there will be a second time, or even a third time. Let's make preparations first. We can't let go of any possibilities. The gods nodded. Tang Wulin took a step forward and arrived in front of the center of the God Realm. Everyone, get ready. Let's work together. Work together. The gods shouted in unison. Tang San pressed his hands on the center of the God Realm in front of him. In an instant, his entire body lit up, and an enormous amount of God power was transmitted into the center of the God Realm without reservation. Ji Dong, Blaze, Huo Yuheo, Zhou Weiqing, and Rong Nianbing followed closely behind. Around them were level 1 gods, then level 2 gods, and finally level 3 gods. The gods released their God power at the same time and poured it into the center of the God Realm. Tang San's eyes turned golden. Through the center of the God Realm, his perception was raised to the extreme. He was the number 1 God King, the paramount God of the Divine Council. At this moment, with the help of the gods, he seemed to have become the entire God Realm. The entire God Realm was like his body, under his control. The energy of the space-time turbulence was extremely vast. Otherwise, it would not have been able to sweep the God Realm away. At this moment, relying on the full strength of the gods, Tang San controlled the entire God Realm to shake slightly. The energy within the space-time turbulence was extremely viscous. It was like a spider web that stuck to the entire God Realm. Even if they gathered all the power of the God Realm, they still wouldn't be able to get rid of this enormous spider web-like energy. What Tang San was doing now was to loosen the spider web as much as possible. In this way, once an external force joined in, then he could immediately take the God Realm out of its current control and escape from the space-time turbulence. Of course, all of this was a theoretical situation. Tang San did not know whether it could be done or not, and no one could give a definite conclusion. But at least, this was the only chance at the moment. The God Realm swayed gently and struggled in the space-time turbulence. The gods also began to feel nervous. One must know that launching such a struggle would consume a considerable amount of energy for the God Realm. If they could not break free, this consumption would weaken the God Realm's resistance to the space-time turbulence. If they tried it too many times, then it would accelerate the collapse of the God Realm. It's coming, get ready, Tang San suddenly shouted. As the controller of the God Realm center, his senses were the most sensitive. He suddenly realized that a suction force was coming from the side of the God Realm. This suction force was not weak, so much so that the entire space-time turbulence appeared to be deflected and deformed. Under Tang San's control, the entire Daluo instantly bloomed with dazzling brilliance. Thick divine power bloomed outwards, forcing the space-time turbulence, entangling his body away and quickly colliding with the suction force. The suction force was indeed very strong, almost instantly combining with the power of the God Realm. A suction force came, pulling the God Realm outwards. Tang San's eyes shone brightly, his soul power was released without reservation. Behind him, two rays of light flashed at the same time. The golden trident and the dark red azure sword appeared almost at the same time. The two supradivine weapons also shone brightly, injecting their own energy into Tang San's body. Boom! The God Realm slammed into the edge of the space-time turbulence. The space-time turbulence itself was an existence filled with destructive power, so the outermost area was its toughest. Only by rushing out of this layer of encirclement could one escape the turbulence. The entire God Realm shook violently. All the gods were shaken. As the center of the God Realm, the 6 controllers, including Tang San, shone brightly at the same time. This was them doing their best to protect the God Realm with their own power. One had to know that this kind of collision could possibly cause the God Realm to collapse. Tang San suddenly frowned, because he clearly felt that the toughness of the edge of the space-time turbulence exceeded his expectations. This time, not only did the God Realm not rush out, it was actually bounced back. Although it did not shatter, it was very obvious that this time, it could not rush out. This is bad. Tang San's heart clenched. This kind of opportunity might not come by again in the next thousands of years. But they really did their best, but still could not rush out. At this moment, Rong Nianbing suddenly shouted, "There's more." Tang San instantly woke up. Almost without hesitation, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of golden red blood on the center of the God Realm. Stimulated by the blood of the God King, the entire center of the God Realm instantly shone brightly, and an incomparably huge energy wave was suddenly released. The entire God Realm was instantly covered in a layer of golden halo. Inside the center of the God Realm, the 2 seeds of life and destruction also shone brightly. The power of creation burst forth and merged with the center of the God Realm. An even stronger suction force than before descended on the entire God Realm at this moment. In the next instant, Tang San controlled the God Realm, and like a burning meteor, it once again collided with the edge of the God Realm. Rumble! The entire God world began to tremble violently. Even the center of the God world began to emit cracking sounds at this moment. This time, Tang San had already exploded with unprecedented power without hesitation. He even initiated this collision at all costs. Tang San and the other 5 almost simultaneously spat out blood, using their own god blood to stimulate the center of the God Realm to protect the God Realm. Success or failure depended on this one move. Suddenly, the originally chaotic halo in the center of the God Realm suddenly changed, and everything suddenly became transparent. The boundless universe and the starlight that filled the sky were all projected in the center of the God Realm at this moment. Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 4 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 4 The feeling of seeing the universe again was so wonderful. The gods, who had exerted all their strength just a moment ago, almost all fell to the ground, gasping for breath. Everyone's eyes flashed with disbelief. They could even clearly see the enormous gray space-time turbulence flying into the distance from the center of the God Realm. It was over. After being swept by the space-time turbulence for so long, they finally broke free from the shackles of the space-time turbulence and saw the light of day again. At this moment, many of the gods couldn't help but shed tears. War god Dai Mubei helped Tang Wulin up from behind. His eyes were also glistening with tears. Success. We finally succeeded. Even Tang San himself was in a daze at this moment. This day came much faster than expected. Although they didn't know where they were now, and didn't know how far away they were from the original Daluo world, at least they had escaped from the space-time turbulence that was filled with a destructive aura. In a normal universe, the God Realm could absorb all kinds of energy to replenish itself and grow normally. He also believed that as long as he could sense the coordinates of the Daluo continent, then he would definitely be able to bring the God Realm back. Tang San stood up, his eyes flashing. He suddenly bowed to the gods present. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for working together and giving us a chance to be reborn. Other than the few in the core circle, the other gods all bowed excitedly. Thank you, God King. At this moment, Daoluo was unprecedentedly cohesive. Every god had witnessed everything that the members of the God Realm Committee had done ever since the calamity befell them. The elemental gods came to Tang San's side and injected their divine power into Tang San, who had exhausted the most. To help him recover his divine power, one had to know that spitting out that mouthful of divine blood previously had already injured Tang San's origin. He had to recuperate well. However, at this moment, whether it was Tang San or the other gods, they didn't care about the previous exhaustion. What could make them more excited than escaping from the space-time turbulence? This time, they were destined to have a chance to return. More importantly, the God realm would be able to exist forever. The lifespan of a god was long, or even endless, but the space-time turbulence turned their lifespan into a countdown. Now that he had broken free from the space-time turbulence, it was as Tang San had said, a new life. With the help of the elemental gods, Tang San gradually stabilized the state of his body. He adjusted his breathing and stabilized himself. A faint smile appeared on Tang San's face as he said, "Let's see where we have come to." He circulated his divine power and injected it into the center of the God realm. The starry sky in the center of the God realm suddenly became clearer. However, at this moment, Tang San subconsciously frowned. He urged his divine power to sense it further, sensing that his expression was not right. Jidong, Blaze, Huo Yuheo, Zhou Weiqing, and Rong Nianbing hurriedly injected their divine power into the center of the God realm to sense the changes in the center of the God realm. This time, everyone's expression changed. What's going on? Why is the energy consumption of our God realm accelerating? Zhou Weiqing almost blurted out. As soon as this was said, it caused an uproar among the gods. It wasn't easy to escape from the space-time turbulence. Why was the energy consumption accelerating? Shouldn't they be absorbing the energy in the universe to replenish themselves and the divine power of the God realm so that the God realm could gradually recover its original appearance? Tang San said in a low voice, "Everyone, don't panic. Let's first determine the situation here." Obviously, this was not a normal situation in the universe. As the supreme god of the entire God realm, Tang San was very calm at this time. He knew very well that he must not panic. Otherwise, it would immediately cause problems for the minds of the gods present. Internal strife was the most frightening thing. He closed his eyes and let his consciousness merge with the center of the God realm. He slowly released his consciousness and felt the situation around him. When his consciousness was released outside of the God realm, even if he was a God King, he could only guarantee his safety through the center of the God realm in this unknown place. After all, there were too many unknown existences in the universe. No matter how strong an individual's strength was, they could not fight against the entire universe. When Tang San's consciousness really left the God realm, his body suddenly trembled. He was surprised to find that the observation of the outside world through his consciousness and the starry sky of the universe through the center of the God realm were completely different. In other words, the center of the God realm had been confused to a certain extent. In the world of his consciousness, the first thing Tang San saw was a deep nothingness. Even though his consciousness was protected by the center of the God realm, he still felt like he was about to fall into it. In this void world, a huge suction force came. He could vaguely see that there was a ring of light at an unknown distance, and the God realm was now in this ring of light. Inside the ring of light was a void. There was a faint dust-like light fog, and outside the ring of light, he could vaguely see the starry sky of the universe. When he saw this, Tang San could not help but suck in a breath of cold air, because he finally knew why such a powerful energy body in the God realm was actually being sucked in without moving. At the same time, it was constantly being swallowed and consumed. As a God King, he could read all the ancient books in the God realm. Tang San clearly remembered that there were some regions in the universe where the gravitational force was very strong, but no celestial bodies could be seen. The main characteristics of this strange astronomical phenomenon were This region had a very strong magnetic field and gravitational force, and it was constantly swallowing a large amount of interstellar matter. Some of the matter's orbit around it would change, forming a circular ring of gas and dust. It had a very large amount of energy, and it could emit all kinds of radiation. Because of its strong gravitational force, light would also be bent in its vicinity. It was a kind of dark celestial body with a very high mass and density after a star collapsed. Its name was black hole. The black hole was like a hunter in the universe, hiding its whereabouts at any time and capturing all the matter that passed by. The black hole was not a kind of physical planet, but a kind of magnetic vortex phenomenon caused by the movement of celestial bodies in the universe. Its energy and radiation were mainly produced by the magnetic force. Because the density of the matter it was composed of was very thin, the light emission was extremely weak, so it was impossible to observe its shape from a long distance. According to its shape and nature, it was really a dark magnetic vortex hole worthy of its name. Yes, what the space-time turbulence passed by was not a star, but an existence with the strongest suction force in the universe, a black hole that was even more terrifying than the space-time turbulence. If it was not for the fact that the energy level of the God realm itself was extremely high, it was afraid that the moment it was sucked into the black hole, it would have been completely annihilated. Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 5 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 5 Black holes were definitely more terrifying than space-time turbulence. Although space-time turbulence itself would consume the energy of the God world, it was not active, but the consumption of the God world's continuous impact. Black holes were different. Black holes had the ability to devour everything. In this black hole, even if the God world was protected by the gods and could be maintained temporarily, but after a long time, not to mention the possibility of breaking free, they would eventually be devoured completely. Therefore, falling into a black hole was not as good as falling into the space-time turbulence before. In the space-time turbulence, at least they could drag out an ignoble existence. In this black hole, the God world would probably be completely melted away in less than a year and a half. At that time, there was no possibility of the gods surviving. Just when Tang San discovered that the God world was in a black hole and his heart sank, suddenly, some different feelings appeared in his consciousness. Vaguely, he clearly felt that several similar divine senses seemed to have swept over his own divine sense. There were consciousness in the black hole? Consciousness was something that only high-level life forms had. Could it be that there were other life forms in here? Just as Tang San was hesitating, the few divine senses that had passed by his divine sense quickly returned, and all of them concentrated on his divine sense. Tang San could clearly feel that the strength of these consciousness was not weak. Although it was not as strong as his, the gap was not too big. Newcomer. A thought was transmitted through a divine sense. Communication between consciousness was the simplest. There was no need for any language or words at all. One only needed to express their meaning clearly and the other party would understand. Who are you? Tang San released his spiritual consciousness, simultaneously releasing his thoughts to the several spiritual consciousnesses that swept over. It seems that another God world was swept here by space-time turbulence. One of the voices sounded and said with some emotion. Tang San was even more puzzled. You are also from the God world? Are you from different God worlds? Where are you? In the God world graveyard. Even light can be swallowed, so you can't see us. Only consciousness, through the blessing of the God world, can barely sense each other. Our situation should be similar. To be precise, a series of catastrophes have appeared in the universe recently. Many universe turbulence appeared and many planes of the God world were shattered. Some stronger God worlds barely resisted but were swept away. We all belong to this category. It seems that you should be the same. May I ask, what is the God world you belong to? This time, it was a thought transmitted by a gentler divine sense. Tang San pondered for a moment and said, you can call us Daoluo. Our God world came from a distant place. In our place, the most important planet is called Daoluo planet. What about everyone? This black hole actually swallowed more than one God world. This made Tang San's mood slightly better. As the saying goes, People in the same boat are bound together. Since everyone is facing the same situation, maybe they can help each other. You can send a strand of consciousness. You can send a wisp of your consciousness to come over. It will be more convenient to communicate. That way, to send a consciousness to send it. Okay. Tang San agreed without hesitation. He was not worried that this was a trap. He could afford to lose a wisp of his consciousness. More importantly, as long as there was a chance, he could not give up at this time. Retracting his consciousness, Tang San's consciousness returned to the center of the God world. When he opened his eyes, he found that everyone's eyes were focused on him. Tang San said in a low voice, "The situation is not very good, but it is not so bad that it cannot be salvaged. We are in a celestial body with a gravitational force and are being sucked in. But in this celestial body, I found that there are other God worlds in a similar situation. They have already communicated with me through consciousness. Later, we will communicate in depth. Let's understand the situation here more before we do anything else." The gods looked at each other. This situation was obviously full of uncertainty, but at least it was not the worst result. After dismissing the gods, only Tang San and the other 5 were left in the committee. Rong Nianbing asked Tang San, "Is the situation not good?" Tang San nodded. "It is a black hole. We were sucked in by the black hole, but I did not lie to everyone. There are indeed other God worlds in this black hole. They will communicate with me later. I need to see what kind of situation they are in. I need to see if there is a chance for them to escape. Judging from their communication with me earlier, it should not be completely hopeless. Otherwise, they would not need to communicate with me at all. They could just wait for death." Hearing the 2 words black hole, everyone present was shocked. This was especially so for Ji Dong and Blaze, who were god kings and had also flipped through the ancient books. They knew very well what a black hole meant. "I will take a rest first. I will use my consciousness to communicate with them later." As he spoke, Tang San sat down and focused on his inner body. With the help of being in the Divine Council, he recovered the consciousness that he had expended earlier. Rong Nianbing said, "Let's work together and shrink the God world as much as possible to reduce the speed at which it is being swallowed by the black hole." "Okay." Ji Dong agreed. The 5 of them raised their hands at the same time and pressed their hands on the center of the God world, slowly injecting their divine power. Dense light once again appeared in the Divine Council, and a gentle halo spread outward. The entire God world trembled slightly and slowly shrank inward, increasing the density of its defenses. Only in this way would the speed at which it was being swallowed be slowed down. The God world itself was very strong, and the level of its energy surpassed that of the mortal world. It contained the power of creation and destruction at the beginning of the universe, so it could temporarily survive in the black hole. Inside the God world, there was no feeling for the time being. As long as the barrier of the God world did not collapse, the inside would not be affected. However, without an external source of energy, the God world's own energy would be exhausted sooner or later. At that time, everything would be annihilated in the black hole. Tang San's body rippled with a faint golden halo, and he sat there like a statue. On his forehead, a faint golden trident rune was faintly discernible. Using the supradivine weapon Poseidon's trident to condense his own soul power was undoubtedly the best result. Tang San sat there motionless, but the golden trident rune on his forehead suddenly flashed. A golden light was projected in midair, and the golden light condensed. In a moment, it had transformed into a small human figure. It was an existence that was exactly the same as Tang San, except that it was entirely golden and extremely solid, as if it was carved out of gold. Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 6 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 6 Tang San's spiritual clone entered the center of the divine world. Immediately, he felt a warm sensation. The center of the divine world was the core of the entire divine world. It contained the purest immortal chi. At the same time, it was connected to every corner of the divine world. The guardian of the God realm also controlled the God realm. When the god of destruction rebelled, the first thing he did was to obtain the key to the center of the God realm. Otherwise, even if he was a God king, he would not be able to resist the center of the God realm. In the center of the God realm, Tang San's avatar was gradually dyed red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, black, and white. It made the avatar look even more gorgeous. His consciousness was focused and the avatar's consciousness was withdrawn. Golden light burst out from its eyes and its body shrank by a third. It had completely withdrawn its energy. Then, the nine-colored halo condensed and shrank behind its head to form a nine-colored halo. In the next moment, Tang San's consciousness changed. Light and shadow flashed and he was already in the outside world. Outside the God realm was a black hole. The moment the avatar left the God realm, Tang San felt an extremely terrifying suction force suddenly coming from all directions. It was an indescribable energy. It was not destruction, but pure devouring. It was a voracious devouring. Tang San knew that in the black hole, even light would be devoured, not to mention other things. In such an environment, even a god would not be able to survive. The nine-colored halo behind the avatar's head flickered and transformed into a light shield that protected the avatar. Even so, the light shield continued to flicker as it resisted the devouring with its core divine power, which was at the pinnacle of the God realm. At this moment, a consciousness flew over and came close to Tang San's consciousness. Tang San pointed with his right hand and opened a gap to let the consciousness in. This strand of divine sense did not have any consciousness. It was like an invisible thread, guiding Tang San's avatar. The consciousness was connected and the guidance was completed in an instant. At a certain level, many things were interconnected. With a flash of light, Tang San's spiritual consciousness flashed inside the black hole and disappeared without a trace. With the guidance of his consciousness, Tang San tried his best to retract the energy from the center of the God world. He tried his best to reduce the black hole's influence on him. To a deity, consciousness was an extremely precious existence. Even the slightest loss of consciousness would take a very long time to recover. Now that there was no external cosmic energy to supplement the divine realm, and there was no power of faith, Tang San didn't dare to let his divine sense be consumed. Therefore, not only did he not use less of his divine sense, he used more of it to make his divine sense more resilient. This way, it would be easier to return successfully. Tang San was not too worried about those who were guiding him. The reason was very simple. The black hole attacked indiscriminately, and it was the same for any existence. When Tang San communicated with those divine senses before, he could feel that the nature of these divine senses was very similar to his own. This proved that everyone's situation should be similar. They were all victims. In this case, there was no point in attacking each other now, let alone when it was just his avatar. Moving in a black hole was definitely an extremely difficult task, even if it was just his divine sense without any physical body. Tang San could clearly feel that his energy consumption was gradually increasing during the high-speed movement. Almost every minute, every second, the energy consumption was increasing by several folds. This was undoubtedly a very terrifying thing. It was completely unimaginable before experiencing it. Ever since he became a god, even when he was imprisoned by the god of destruction, Tang San did not have such a feeling. This was a kind of real fear that originated from the origin. It was as if he would disappear at any time. Just as Tang San's sense of fear grew stronger and stronger, and the protective power given to him by the center of the god world began to crumble, suddenly, the stars moved and the sky and earth spun. The pressure suddenly lightened, and the suction force from the surroundings instantly disappeared. At this moment, Tang San could not help but feel a strong sense of release. The light wheel formed by the center of the god world condensed and formed again. A nine-colored halo shrouded him, causing his divine sense to become more solid in an instant. Tang San was surprised to find that it seemed that after the suction of the black hole, his divine sense had become more solid. One had to know that he was now a divine king. His cultivation and divine sense had long reached the pinnacle of the divine world. He didn't know how many years it had been since he experienced such a feeling of improvement. Before he could deeply feel this, everything around him suddenly became clear. It was no longer darkness, and when he saw everything in front of him, he could not help but be deeply shocked. It was a kind of shock that was almost touching because he saw a planet, and he saw more than one planet. Although these planets were of different sizes and their arrangement seemed a little strange, they were, after all, real. To be precise, they were not planets, but planets that were condensed into the shape of a god world. They were almost solid. The number of planets was a little strange. Among them, the most eye-catching were the three on the left. These three purple-black planets were the smallest in size, but they were gathered together to form a triangle. In the middle of the triangle, there was a pitch-black vortex-like existence, and it gave people the feeling that it was even more like a small black hole. The three purplish-black planets orbited around the small black hole in a slow rhythm. Next to it was a green god world. Among all the planet-like god worlds, this god world was the largest in terms of overall size. The green halo was faintly discernible, and there were faint golden lightning flashing inside. It looked very strange. All the god worlds were completely arranged in a ring, and it looked like a strange magic array. The space that Tang San had just entered was within their range of coverage. These planet-like god worlds each emitted their own light, and together, they supported a pure light shield. In this world of the black hole, it formed a small internal cycle. In addition to the first two god worlds, the third one was white. A white halo was faintly discernible, and there was a divine aura that Tang San was very familiar with. The surface of the god world seemed to be covered with a layer of clouds, quietly flowing, and faintly discernible. It gave people a sense of intimacy. The next two divine realms appeared to be rather similar. To put it more accurately, they were similar to the divine realm that Tang San resided in. In terms of overall auras, they appeared to be a lot weaker than the Daoluo divine realm, but they were also similar in that they were both shrouded in rainbow light and mist, and resembled actual planets. Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 7 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 7 The last realm of the gods was the most bizarre because it brought sound to this independent space. A pleasant buzzing sound came from this realm of the gods from time to time. The realm of the gods was the smallest in size, but in this small size, rings of light vibrated outwards. Among all the 6 realms of the gods in this independent space, it seemed to be the core. All the 6 types of divine powers in the entire space were perfectly harmonized under the effect of this buzzing sound, resisting the power of the black hole outside. It seemed like he really came to the right place. With Tang San's cultivation level, after a short period of shock, the first thing he could confirm was that the existence of this independent space was very strange. In this space, although the power of the realm of the gods was still gradually being devoured by the black hole, the speed of the devouring was much slower. It should be about the same speed as Daoluo in the space-time turbulence. In other words, there would not be much of a problem for a short period of time here. Welcome to the graveyard of the realm of the gods. A clear voice sounded. Compared to the previous transmission of thoughts through divine sense, it was much cleaner. A ray of light flashed, and a figure silently appeared not far in front of Tang San. He wore a white robe that was simple and unadorned. He looked to be around 27 or 28 years old. He was very handsome, and there was a mysterious charm surrounding him. A human, Tang San said with some surprise. After all, this was the universe. He originally thought that these beings who were also from the realm of the gods might be different types of creatures. He did not expect that the first thing he saw would be a human. This made him subconsciously feel a sense of familiarity. The young man in white smiled slightly. Yes, there are thousands of paths, but they all lead to the same destination, at the level of the realm of the gods. In fact, only humans can reach this level. Even if they are not human, they will eventually cultivate to look like us. Both sides were communicating through divine sense, so there was no language barrier. Tang San nodded slightly. That's true. However, this is the first time I've seen so many people of the same kind. What you said before was right. We were also swept here by the space-time turbulence. I didn't expect that there would be such a magical world in this black hole. Hearing what he said, the young man in white's expression instantly became a little lonely. The current situation is a path that we found after sacrificing countless realm of the gods. It's just a struggle at death's door. I haven't asked for your name yet. Seeing how polite he was, Tang San naturally did not hide anything. My name is Tang San. The realm I'm in the past is called Daluo. My gods to Poseidon to begin with. The white-robed youth nodded slightly. I am Yi Yunsu, and my deity seat is Qin. Everyone calls me the Zither Emperor. Earlier, he had already sensed that this white-robed young man came from the planet that he thought was the center of the planet. It's always good for us to have one more ally and we'll have more chances. Tang San's heart skipped a beat when he heard the word chance. If they really had a chance, it would undoubtedly be the best thing for them. But he did not ask too much. He could not appear too anxious when he did not understand the other party at all. Yi Yunsu, Emperor of Qin, made a gesture of invitation. With a shake of his body, he flew towards his own realm of the gods. A white light was released from his body and naturally led to Tang San's body. Tang San did not need to do anything and naturally flew along with him. His divine sense naturally absorbed the energy in this space formed by the sixth realm of the gods. The effects of the black hole had already quietly recovered during the flight. Just as they were about to reach the Emperor of Qin's realm of the gods, Yi Yunsu suddenly turned to look at Tang San and said, "Your divine sense is indeed powerful. It seems that our previous senses were not wrong. The realm of the gods you are in is very powerful." Tang San laughed bitterly, "But I still can't escape the fate of being swept here by the space-time turbulence." Yi Yunsu smiled faintly. His body flashed with white light. In the next moment, he and Tang San had arrived at a place. The surrounding grass was like a cushion and a faint fragrance wafted over. Compared to Daluo's palace, this place was much more simple. They were surrounded by a large bamboo forest, and the place where they were now was a small courtyard surrounded by bamboo fences. There were 7 or 8 bamboo houses in the courtyard, and everything looked like a rural setting. But if one looked closely, they would discover that all the bamboo was emitting a faint green color and seemed to contain an endless amount of life energy. The door of a bamboo house in front of them opened and a young girl wearing a light yellow dress with bright eyes walked out. When she saw Tang San, she didn't show any surprise. She just nodded to him and then said to Yi Yunsu, "We have guests. I'll go prepare some bamboo dew and bamboo shoots to entertain them." When he saw her, Yi Yunsu's eyes were full of gentleness. "Thank you for your hard work, Sula." Sula smiled sweetly and the two of them looked at each other affectionately. She turned around and left. Yi Yunsu then said to Tang San, "This is my wife, Sula, please." As he spoke, he made a gesture to Tang San. At this moment, the door of another bamboo house opened and a young girl who looked a little older walked out. She whispered to Yi Yunsu, "Husband, we have guests." "Hello, I'm Anya." Anya's charm was no less than Sula's. What was strange was that her ears were pointed and she didn't seem to be an ordinary human. She had a kind of peerless beauty. The elegant beauty in the proud bamboo forest added a bit of moving spirit. Tang San's expression suddenly became a little strange. Yi Yunsu walked forward naturally and gently hugged her. "Sister Anya, I'll entertain the guests." "Sister Anya, let's go see how the purple bamboo divine needle is going." The door of another bamboo house opened and a beautiful young girl walked out. She was wearing a palace dress and looked noble and elegant. However, she had a sweet smile and a bit of liveliness. Anya smiled and said, "Well, the ocean is already there. Let's go take a look. But Xiang Luan, you have to change your bad habit of sleeping in." Xiang Luan stuck out her tongue. "Who told this body not to be mine? I always feel tired if I don't sleep enough every day." Anya walked over and took her hand. She turned around and nodded to Tang San. "Sorry for the neglect. Guest, we have some matters to attend to, so we'll be going first." After she finished speaking, she pulled the girl called Xiang Luan and quickly left. Xiang Luan looked at Tang San curiously and whispered to Anya, "I don't think I've seen this guest before. The halo behind his head is quite beautiful." Anya pulled her and the two of them left the courtyard and floated away. Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 8 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 8 After hearing Yi Yunsu say that he had 4 wives, Tang San's mood became even stranger. He couldn't help but ask, "Can you love all of them equally?" He was a very emotional person, and he had only loved Xiao Wu in his life. When he was still cultivating on the Daoluo continent, he had many women by his side, but he had never been tempted. Back then, Hulina and Qian Ringsu were all stunning beauties, but Tang San was always able to keep his heart, and he only loved Xiaowu. Therefore, when he heard Yi Yunsu say that he had 4 wives, he couldn't help but feel a little disapproving. Yi Yunsu laughed bitterly. That's a long story. Back then, I thought that I would only love one person for the rest of my life, but there are many times when I can't control myself. Sometimes, you can't stop loving just because you don't want to. A woman has almost given up everything for you, even her life. How can you abandon her? Tang San shrugged and said, everyone has their own life, and this is your life. You don't have to explain anything to me. Yi Yunsu's mouth twitched, and he said, it's not that I want to explain, but it's because you'll see a few other people later. Some of them have more than my wives. Especially just as he said this, Tang San's eyes moved slightly, and he subconsciously turned his head to look at the sky. In an instant, thousands of strands of auspicious qi appeared, and a 7-colored auspicious cloud floated in the air. On top of the 7-colored auspicious cloud, there was a person standing proudly. This person wore golden armor and held a long staff in his hand. When Tang San's gaze landed on him, he immediately felt a piercing pain in his eyes. He couldn't help but be attracted to the long staff in his hand, which seemed to be able to support the heavens and earth. Yi Yunsu couldn't help but laugh. He's always an impatient person. Whoever he says will arrive. The rainbow cloud flashed, and in the next instant, a golden figure had already landed in front of Tang San and Yi Yunsu. The appearance of the golden armor faded, and it turned into a man in a green robe. He looked about the same age as Yi Yunsu, but he was taller and had a burly figure. There was a hint of arrogance between his brows, and there were faint immortal clouds on his green robe, as if he was a living creature. Compared to Yi Yunsu, Emperor Qin's reserved aura, this person's aura was not only very strong, he didn't have any intention of hiding it, like a dazzling sun. As soon as he landed, he couldn't help but size up Tang San's divine sense. His voice was so loud that it seemed to echo, and he shouted in a deep voice, outsider, you dare to release so much divine sense. Aren't you afraid that we'll kill you here and shake your foundation? Unlike Yi Yunsu's gentleness, this person had just arrived, and he already had an aggressive aura. Tang San frowned slightly, and said indifferently, then you can give it a try. Let's see if you have the ability to do so. The newcomer laughed. You do have some guts. I am Pipefish. Everyone calls me Xiandi. Xiandi Pipefish. Looking at this person, Tang San thought to himself, this person really does have a bit of a unique immortal spirit. See God Tang San. Tang San said indifferently. Pipefish said, you only have divine sense here, so I won't compete with you. Yi Yunsu, why don't you invite your guests in? Yi Yunsu couldn't help but laugh. You're turning the tables. If I didn't see you, we would already be inside. Please come in. Tang San and Pipefish followed Yi Yunsu into the bamboo house. The bamboo house's interior was very simple. It was obviously a living room, with a small bracelet and a few bamboo chairs. It was obvious that this Emperor Qin's daily life was simple. Pipefish said, every time I come here, I feel ashamed. Sometimes, simple things are really quite good. It's not like where I come from, where it's not easy to hide and relax. Yi Yunsu laughed and said, that's because you have too many wives. Pipefish laughed bitterly. Yes, I regret it, but there's no use in regretting it. To outsiders, my Xiandi is like a high and mighty immortal. Every day, I have a jade palace and fine wine, but who knows the troubles in my heart? At home, I don't have any status at all. With Misty as the leader, they're really sincere and united. You don't know, but every night, where I sleep is arranged by them, and I can't go against it. Otherwise, no one will pay attention to me. What's the point of being a Xiandi? Tang San resisted the urge to laugh and said, I don't have such troubles. I only have one wife. I just need to accompany her every day. Why don't we talk about proper business first? I heard you mention the graveyard of the God Realm. What's going on? Yi Yunsu and Pipefish looked at each other. Pipefish said, you say it. Your thoughts are the clearest. The Zither Emperor nodded his head, and his expression became solemn. Just like what we said when we communicated through divine sense before. For some unknown reason, a great disaster suddenly appeared in the universe, and the cosmic turbulence caused by this disaster swept across many star areas. We are all victims, and it seems that you should be the same. Tang-san nodded. That's right. The space-time turbulence came very suddenly. At that time, we only had time to protect the God realm. Then, we were swept away by the space-time turbulence. We finally found a chance to escape, but we were sucked in by this black hole, Yi Yunsu said. Then our situation is similar. After I cultivated to a certain level, my body sublimated, and then I created my own God realm. My God realm as a whole is small, but there are few God puppets. The overall strength of its energy is not bad, so it protected itself. According to our later judgment, in this space-time turbulence, who knows how many weaker God realms collapsed because of it. This is really a terrible disaster, Tang-san asked. I see that there are a total of 6 God realms here. Don't tell me that no one knows where this space-time turbulence came from. Yi Yunsu shook her head and said, I only have a vague guess. According to what we know and our guesses, there should be a huge change in an extremely powerful plane. It could even be a huge disaster. Then, a huge amount of energy was generated and formed turbulence. For some reason, this turbulence was strengthened in the universe. In the end, it turned into countless space-time turbulence that ran amok in the universe. That's right. These space-time turbulence should gradually disappear in the universe after a certain period of time, but we were unlucky and became victims. Hearing him say this, Tang-san quickly analyzed in his mind. The collapse of a large plane? How powerful must that plane be to be able to do this? Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 9 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 9 Tang-san said, your analysis is very reasonable. There are similar records in the ancient records of our God realm. Therefore, the purpose of the development of the God realm is to become a divine planet, or a super planet, that can stabilize in the universe. At this point, he couldn't help but think of the God of Destruction. The reason why the God of Destruction was so eager to expand the God realm was so that he could become a divine planet as soon as possible. If the Daoluo divine realm could become a divine planet, then it wouldn't be swept away no matter how powerful the spatial turbulence was. When that happened, planets like the Daoluo continent, as well as the planets where Blaze, Jidong, and Zhou Weiqing were on, would become satellites of the divine planet. The divine planet would become the center of these satellites. It was similar to a star, but not a star. It would become the pinnacle of the universe, comparable to a star, and self-controllable. Daoluo's evolution speed was very fast. If not for the disaster this time, which allowed the God of Destruction to complete his expansion, he might have become a divine planet in tens of thousands of years. The existence of a divine planet was enough to protect a star region. However, according to the laws of the universe, a divine planet was like a cultivator going against the heavens. To cultivate to become a god, one would definitely encounter many difficulties. Just like this time, the turbulence of time and space they encountered almost caused the entire god realm to collapse. Pipefish said, our situation is similar. We were swept in by the turbulence of time and space, and then pulled out by this black hole. When we first arrived, there were at least dozens of divine realms that had been annihilated in this black hole. Those who were able to survive were those who were strong enough. Everyone communicated through their divine senses and spontaneously organized together. It took a long time to reach the current scale. Although it still can't solve the problem and will still lead to destruction, at least it will take a little longer. Tang-san nodded and waited for him to continue. Yi Yunsu smiled. Since all of you are also victims, we would like to invite all of you to join our big family. At least, we can add some vitality to this graveyard of the God realm. Moreover, if everyone huddled together for warmth, they would be able to last longer. What do you think, Brother Tang-san? Tang-san did not agree immediately. Thank you very much for your kind intentions, but first, I want to ask if there are any requirements for joining. Yi Yunsu smiled. There are definitely some requirements. If your noble god realm joins us, you will have to listen to everyone's orders. Furthermore, you will have to release a portion of your God realm's power and integrate it into our God stabilizing array. Only by retaining the same level of divine power as the other divine realms in order to achieve a state of equilibrium, can the God stabilizing array remain intact. Tang San immediately understood the meaning of his words. In other words, if we join this place, we need to contribute some divine power to maintain our God realm and your God realm at the same energy level. Right, Pipefish said. Exactly. We tested the soul fixation array for a long time, and we lost quite a few of them. Only in the God realm did we manage to complete it. Furthermore, it had absorbed all of the damaged divine worlds in the black hole before it could finally take shape. During this process, everyone had paid a great price. After all, you are latecomers, so you will definitely have to pay a price. Furthermore, only when the God realms are in equilibrium can they become part of the God stabilizing array. Tang San asked calmly. Then what if the God realm that joins us this time is inferior to your individual God realms? Will you be the one to reverse nurture it? Yi Yunsu said seriously. Exactly. As long as it can hold on until it integrates into our God stabilizing array and maintains its integrity. If the God realm is not strong enough, we will gather everyone's power to reverse nurture it. Even if the overall divine power is diluted, we will still allow it to join us. After all, an additional God realm will make the God stabilizing array more stable. Tang San looked at Yi Yunsu with a burning gaze. Yi Yunsu looked at him calmly. After the two of them stared at each other for a few seconds, Tang San nodded and said, I understand. However, this is a serious matter, so I can't give you an answer right now. I need to go back and discuss it with my companions. Yi Yunsu said, Of course. We are just telling you the basic situation. If you are willing, we will use the God stabilizing array to receive your God realms. After ensuring your own safety, we will talk about the separation of energy. Tang San said, I also want to know, who is in charge of this alliance that you have formed? Or is there an organization that is in charge? Yi Yunsu said, the current situation on our side is that each of the 6 God realms will nominate a representative God King. There are a total of 6 God Kings, and they are jointly in charge of the entire God realm. If Brother Tang San is here, then he should be the 7th God King. When we encounter something, we will vote to decide how to deal with it. Tang San said. In other words, there is no one God realm that can control everything here. Of course, Pipefish said. Do you think that everyone will be led by someone else? When Pipefish said this, his arrogant aura was clearly released again. Tang San sighed softly and said, if there is no one to lead, then there is no one to make decisions. If this continues, we can only wait for death. Yi Yunsu's expression changed slightly. He did not expect this outsider in front of him to be so insightful. In fact, there were indeed some problems with their temporary alliance. It was precisely because no one was willing to submit to anyone that they could only maintain the status quo. No one could convince everyone. In order for everyone to be able to make decisions in the near future and find a way to survive, they were now working on solving this problem. At this moment, a somewhat low voice sounded. We will naturally solve this problem, and we are in the process of doing so. If you are willing to join us, you will naturally become a part of us in solving this problem. I think that you do not have a choice. The door opened, and a tall man walked in from outside. Pipefish was not short, but this man was half a head taller than Pipefish, and was also taller than Tang San. Tang San's height was about the same as Pipefish's. He had a tall and sturdy figure, and broad shoulders. When he walked into the room, an invisible sense of pressure and heat instantly rose. This man had short red hair, and his gaze was so focused that it seemed to be solid. He did not have Pipefish's arrogance, but he naturally had a kind of majestic grandeur. Do you think that we do not have a choice? Tang San faced him, and his gaze did not waver in the slightest because of the pressure that this man brought. Yes, you do not have a choice. You can either be destroyed in the black hole, or join us and seek a way to survive, the red-haired man said in a low voice. A way to survive? Then I would like to know, what is this way to survive? Tang San asked. The red-haired man said, you will only have the right to know if you join us. Otherwise, You will only be an outsider. Report. Select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation. Chapter 10 The Legend of the Tang Sect Heroes. Chapter 10 Ryukyu. It was indeed another divine king. Tang-san could clearly sense that each of the three people present was extremely powerful and had a deep foundation. They were worthy of the title of Divine King. I understand what you're trying to say. When we return, I will seriously consider your suggestions and give you a response as soon as possible. Tang-san clearly did not intend to continue the discussion. Lei Xiang said indifferently, "It's best to be quick. In this black hole, the devouring power will increase from time to time. In the process of you being consumed, it will also be a loss to all of us." Tang-san said, "I understand." Yi Yunsu said, "All right, then I won't delay Brother Tang any further. I'll send you out." At this moment, Sula walked in from outside. As soon as she entered, she sensed that the atmosphere was a little off. She smiled sweetly and said, "I've brought back the bamboo dew. Let's drink some together." Pipefish smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, thank you very much." Sula rolled her eyes at him and said, "How do you know that she's older than my Yunsu? You should call her sister-in-law, otherwise, there won't be anything to drink." Pipefish laughed and said, "Then I won't drink. I'm also leaving." After saying that, he shook his body and with a flash of light, he disappeared without a trace. Tang-san saw all of this. It was very obvious that the relationship between the several divine realms that already existed in the soul-fixing array was not so harmonious. After flying out of Yi Yunsu's divine realm, the Emperor of Qin saw the soul-fixing array again. The feeling was different from the first time he saw it. Tang-san silently memorized the situation and feelings in the soul-fixing array in his heart. At the same time, he absorbed the divine power in the soul-fixing array to replenish himself. Yi Yunsu brought him to the edge of the soul-fixing array and said calmly, "Brother Tang, because you haven't become one of us, there are some things that I can't tell you too much about. However, there is one thing that your judgment is very correct. We do need a leader who can make decisions at crucial times." At the same time, everyone needed a more harmonious relationship. There was indeed a chance of survival, but it required everyone to work together. Therefore, I sincerely hope that you can join us. Tang-san nodded. "I understand. I will make a decision as soon as possible." "All right. Have a safe trip." With a slight thought, Tang-san's body shook, and he had already gotten out of the mind fixation array. With the help of the previous police officer, he was now able to face the powerful suction force of the black hole calmly. After all, this was different from when he came here. He was only returning to Daluo. Daluo's main body and the center of the God realm were both there. They were the most eye-catching targets, and there was no need to be on guard against them. Tang-san returned to Daluo in less than half of the time he used to come here. With his divine sense back in place, Tang-san stood up under the nourishment of the immortal spiritual energy in the center of the God realm. Rong Nianbing, Huo Yuheo, Zhou Weiqing, Blaze and Ji Dong were all waiting here. Tang-san recounted what he had seen and heard. "Everyone, please consider whether we should join their mind fixation array. If we do, we will undoubtedly be restricted. Moreover, based on my observations, there are still some areas that are worth discussing." Tang-san said in a low voice. Rong Nianbing said, "Tell us your analysis first. You have observed it from a close distance." Tang-san said, "First of all, the relationship between the six god realms doesn't seem to be that harmonious. This time, I have only seen 3 god kings, and it's already like this. There are still 3 more who haven't come. This is already very clear. It's very likely that none of them are willing to submit to each other, which is why this situation has occurred. Judging from the situation inside the soul-fixing array, each of these 6 god realms seems to be slightly weaker than us individually, but not by much. However, when I carefully observed that Yi Yunsu would vaguely release some divine sense to interfere with me, at first, I didn't notice it, especially when I was about to leave. When I was about to observe more carefully, he purposely spoke to attract my attention. At the same time, he released his divine sense to interfere again. This is even more evidence for my judgment. If I'm not wrong, their situation is very likely not as good as it seems. The energy contained in the mind fixation array is very likely to be problematic. Huo Yuheo said. Dad, can we still join in this situation? Tang San smiled and said, of course we can. At least this mind fixation array is very redeemable. Just like how we don't fully understand them, they don't fully understand us either. Our god realms were compressed by the god of life and god of destruction at the cost of their lives, so their energy is extremely condensed. Therefore, what they see on the surface is quite different from what we truly possess. Even if they want to deal with us, they have to absorb us into the mind fixation array. Once we're there, it's impossible for them to chase us away. Therefore, there are only two situations. One is that they accept us and let us become a part of them. The other is to destroy us, completely destroy us, and then absorb and devour us. Ji Dong said, isn't that very risky? Tang San nodded and said, of course there are risks, but for us, we have no choice. That mad god is right. If we stay in the black hole alone, we will definitely be destroyed. Only by becoming a part of them can we struggle at death's door. Moreover, from what they said, they should have a way to get out of this situation. From the fluctuations of their divine sense, it should be true and not fabricated. Therefore, we really have no choice. No matter what, we have to try. It's just that we can't completely follow their requests. Rong Nianbing said in a deep voice. Tang San, you decide. We will all listen to you. At this time, we don't have time to hesitate. The black hole's devouring power is too strong. The longer we delay, the less power we have to protect ourselves. If we want to act, we have to act quickly. Tang San nodded and said, all right, gather all the level 1 gods. We'll do a final discussion. At the same time, mobilize all the level 2 and level 3 gods. Get ready for battle. Orders were continuously sent out from the Divine Council. The whole of Daluo was mobilized in a short period of time. Everything was going on in full swing. Emperor Qin's god realm. The cup in Yi Yun's whose hand was made of bamboo. The green liquid inside emitted a faint fragrance. It was his specialty bamboo dew. What's wrong? Sula leaned on his shoulder and asked softly. You look very worried. Is this outsider difficult to deal with? Report select text and click report to let us know about any bad translation.